Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ask Dr. Joanne show. I am your host, Dr. Joanne Frederick. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia. Well, today we are jumping on the hype like everyone else and talking about the Chris Rock and Will Smith dilemma, but from a counseling mental health perspective. With me today, I have our producer, Princess. She's going to come on with us. Come on through, Princess, and have this conversation with me.
Hey,
Can't do
Dr.
this
J.
alone. Hi, I can't do this alone. I need you. Let us talk.
Okay.
So, as the audience know, everyone's talking about this slap that Chris Rock received on stage at the Oscars 2022.
Right.
And folks have a lot of different conversations. So I got a couple of phone calls, wanted to hear my thoughts, and I heard a couple of thoughts, and I'm like, I like that.
Okay.
What are your thoughts, and what can we talk about?
Okay. So one, did not get a chance to actually watch the awards show or the ceremony. So the first thing my first impression of it was Will Smith then lost his mind. That was my first impression because I heard about the radio conversations. I heard people talking about it on the news. And then I had a conversation with my mother, and she was like, well, did you see it? And I said, no. So I went through and I actually went searching on the internet to see the interaction. And to me, I always say, you never know what anybody is going through. You never know what they're struggling with. And that definitely makes me think about the services that we offer at JFL. As far as, people are all going through something. And so counseling is very, very important. And so I watched the video. And in watching the video, I saw Jada Pinkett Smith's face in response to what Chris Rock said. And what I realized is that I've watched Red Table Talk a whole bunch, and I have seen Jada be hurt in her facial expressions. I've seen her be, disdained or not like something. And it appeared that something was not quite right with her facial expression in response to what Chris Rock said. And so what I realized is that Will was responding to whatever was happening with his wife. He was responding to that. And so that was kind of my initial take on it.
Yeah, okay. I like that because, your perspective is similar to many people in the public. Didn't hear it, just saw some things, then went back and, what they know about the couple or what they don't know, kind of just putting it all together, trying to
Right.
make sense.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, from a mental health perspective, what comes to me is anger and rage.
Okay.
That's the first thing, but then there's another piece to that. So,
Mhm.
the anger and emotional intelligence. The anger is okay, you're on a show, hearing something, there was a trigger. And the trigger, I think it could have been even before we saw what we saw. These two people may have had interactions with other things, or I don't know the history, but the anger was enough to not be able to have self-control, which is hear that, let it go, deal with it at appropriate time and place. But the anger was okay, I'm going to get up now, take care of this physically, then sit back down and yell and curse more than once, twice.
Mhm.
And that was anger, rage, the inability to control that. That's one side. The other side that I will talk about too is bullying. So, what we saw Chris Rock say and do, is that not a form of bullying? Yes, I understand that comedians do tell jokes and they pick on people in the audience to tell a joke.
Mhm.
But in that sense, whatever their inside joke was and whatever struggles, Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith goes through, in that
Mhm.
moment, it was a time of like being picked on and he had to defend.
Okay. So, I guess I never really thought about the bullying aspect because I know that people respond to bullying differently than they will respond to all sorts of other situations. Like, it's one thing to say something, but when you actually feel bullied, there are some other emotions that come along with that. Because you actually feel singled out, you feel sometimes trapped, and so that does kind of explain Will's, I guess, his response to Chris Rock. But then thinking about some of the things that Jada Pinkett Smith has recently posted, she's talked about her immune disease. She's talked about how, she made the choice to cut her hair. And seeing as though the comment that Chris Rock actually said was speaking to her actually cutting off all of her hair, I started thinking, how us women say, oh my gosh, I don't feel pretty today. I don't feel like it, like I don't want anybody to be looking at me. Like we go through that. We want to feel attractive. And so what if before they even got to this event, they had a conversation and Will was like, no, honey, you haven't been out in a while. Come on and go out with me. It'll be a fun night. And maybe they went through this whole conversation. Like maybe she had the stylist come, to dress people. And she was like, I'm sending everybody home. I'm not going. And then they get there and Chris Rock singles them out. And in your words, they bully, he bullies them in that situation and talks about the one thing that she was like feeling doubt about. And so that was Will coming to her rescue.
Right, right. And I think that could be a great justification, really, because again, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes, right? All we know is what we
Exactly.
saw on television. And
Mm-hmm.
even that sometimes is staged, sometimes it's cut, sometimes it's put back together. Like we're just seeing what we think we see. Yeah.
Exactly.
hmm but the third thing that comes to mind too is I think about how there's been an uptick in violence.
Yes.
People on the streets, strangers, family members against each other, and definitely in the schools.
Mm-hmm.
So when we see this on national TV, does that not one show us what is going on in general? People having road rage and pulling out guns and shooting and hurting each other. So we see that what we just saw that's happening in general. But
Mm-hmm.
then also, what kind of modeling or message are we sending to other people? Somebody call you a name, somebody disrespect you in any way,
Mm-hmm.
handle it right now. And there's no consequences. Just take care of it.
Well, I will say that just looking at some of the recent national media coverage that you've been getting and actually going into some of these platforms, and you've been talking about how there is an increase in violence. But we're seeing it in our local area, but we're also seeing it on a national level. So I definitely think that that has something to do with it. But I even think that, this is one of the effects of COVID. I think that everybody was in that pressure cooker. And now, that the world is opening back up and, things are changing and, people are more not necessarily just home with the families, but now they're actually in public and they're out and about. That's where we're going to see that balloon of emotions, whether it is anger, whether it is frustration. We're now seeing that outside of the home. Whereas I think a lot of it might have been happening during the pandemic behind closed doors.
Yes, yes. So what we're seeing is people dealing with loss, change,
Mm-hmm.
frustration, right? And we're just seeing the reaction. But what
Right.
is the behind the scenes story? Because I think
Exactly.
I've heard you say that that they've had, well, it's been publicly displayed their marital issues and those types of things. And I think that, people who are famous, they have the same issues as people who are not famous, right?
Right.
But when their issues come up, we tend to pay attention to it and talk about it and all this kind of things when it's the same troubles that every normal person has.
I agree. I agree. I think they deal with the same stuff we deal with. It's just we don't get looked at under a microscope, whereas because they're in the public eye, everyone gets to weigh in on it. I mean, even us today, we're weighing in on the overall situation. So definitely, I think that's an additional challenge that they have.
Definitely, definitely. So, our viewers, feel free to comment, even after we post this. Put your comment in the comment section and share, this conversation because I just question like what happens next, right? What happens behind the scenes emotionally for everyone, the three parties that were involved, but the rest of everybody else who saw it, right? What happens next? What are the repercussions in terms of the law, taking back an award, or, the mark it even has on my understanding. This was the first Oscar award show that was produced, managed, directed, everything by all black cast. And if
Mhm.
that's, what happened or happens, there's a stereotype that, they want to put on us.
Exactly.
And so how does that look to the industry? They're always coming up with reasons, right? Um, and so that's my next questions are just to look, but really the mental health piece. What was the fallout and how do we get here in the first place?
Well, okay. So because I love when you provide the tips, this is me and my producer hat. What are some things that you would recommend for people that are maybe they are experiencing a loved one going through something, and maybe they do feel like they have to protect that loved one when they go out? What
Yeah.
are some tips to help that supportive spouse or that supportive family member to not, respond in such rage when things like this might come about?
For tips on how to protect loved ones, right?
Mhm.
First, remember that your role is protector. Whether it means verbally or physically, you have to protect this disenfranchised individual. So it
Mhm.
could even be a child. And
Right.
so, in protecting, one of the things you want to do is to pay attention to what's going on, what's said and what's not being said, what is being done and what is not being done. And then think through how and when to address it, what levels you have to address it. So the first address is with that person directly at a moment that's appropriate, a timing that's appropriate, and
Mhm.
a comfortable method for you. So when we communicate our needs, if we want someone to stop doing something, some
Mhm.
people will have a phone call, a face to face, a text, an email. What is comfortable for you to come to communicate with this person what you need and what you don't need?
Okay.
And the sooner you can do that, the better, because I've even had issues where I held on to it or things for a long time and then I just explode. And
Mhm.
people may look at me like, what in the world? That's because I held on to it, didn't deal with it the way I'm suggesting from a mental health perspective. And that's when we protecting our loved ones. If
Mhm.
addressing it to the other person doesn't work, you don't see a change or it escalates, then we have to take that to another level. But regardless of what we do, I would say never let them see you lose your cool. And even if you have to lose your cool one on one, but in a safe way, that's fine. But not for a bunch of people to see you lose your cool
Right.
because now your credibility is questioned. And I
Mhm.
think that the higher your role is, and that includes even being a parent,
Mhm.
when they see you lose it, it's not good. But if
Right.
you lose it and you couldn't help, and then after you're like, oh gosh, oh, I apologize, I didn't mean to, there's probably time for some help, some assistance. Run past what you're going through, run it by someone else, run it past someone else. And of course, I'm an advocate for mental health therapy. Everyone should have one by now. I do, checking in, right? Because we can have temperament issues that can be checked in just by talking unconditionally about things. So I hope those are some tips that I can leave viewers with on what to do in these types of situations.
Excellent. Okay. Those are really great and helpful.
Thank you.
Okay. So, folks, we want to thank you for watching the Ask Dr. Joanne show. Make sure that you like the video, you share it with someone. And if you have not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button so you can know when we're putting out new content. Okay. So, Dr. J, at this point,